Damn, what is up, my internet friends? Welcome to Walking and Talking, the show where I walk and talk. I almost didn't do this today because I was in a pissy mood, and then I decided I would attempt to overcome this pissy mood and just do this because I figured that talking for a long time would force something of it, you know. I wouldn't be able to just marinate in pissiness. I would either have to cheer up a bit, or in the sort of crucible of, you know, the echo chamber of this vacuum of hearing myself talk for a long time, the pissiness would have to escalate to an untenable degree and perhaps lead to some sort of catharsis or something like that. But I'm aiming for the former option, really, of just getting over it or whatever. And so, in service of that, I'm really glad that we're here, that you're here. It is pretty unbelievable. It's insane, you know, that videos like this exist. It's insane. And, you know, I've laid off of all the non-dual philosophy for a bit, so this video ought to be pretty different from the last one. And in fact, I was thinking it might be interesting just to kind of lay out all kinds of interpretations for this video to mostly consist of interpretations of things, or even explanations of things, if you will. I could go ahead and explain everything, or try and explain everything, which is, you know, the most common request. Everyone wants me to explain why I make these videos. And while I do think that pretty much every single video that I have made could be considered a complete explanation of why I make them already, why not go ahead and try and explain it so completely thoroughly that sense will be made of it, to the extent that sense obliterates itself. You know, and maybe I'll try and just like even avoid going up chains of abstraction and speaking in overly philosophical terms. You know, we'll just be pragmatic today. Why not? Totally down to earth, a totally accessible explanation, and everything will be totally normal and understood and make perfect sense. It'll be great. Aren't you excited? So henceforth, here come the explanations. Here come all the answers. Sorry, I know I'm taking on a little bit of a sarcastic tone or something, but I'll genuinely try not to get sarcastic. But yeah, I mean, now I'm like, can I really do this? Like, or would it be just a lie? I mean, I'm gonna try and refrain. I'm gonna try and refrain from all the qualifying statements about the nature of truth and all that. And I'll just try and lay out a bunch of interpretations of what I'm doing in plain English so that they're understandable. I guess you could say I'm just trying to exist in the world in a way that makes sense. I'm trying to make sense of being in the world myself. All the time, you know? Aren't you? I mean, maybe you don't. I'm sure a lot of people just don't really think about it, you know? Just don't really think about much of the big questions of meaning or anything like that, or, you know, big abstract ideas. The far-reaching webs of interconnection and all of that stuff. Maybe you just don't think about those sorts of things, and that's completely fine. I have zero judgment. I almost envy you. Because truth be told, you're not really gonna like get anywhere by going, you know, in any kind of ultimate sense, by going up these chains of abstraction and seeking for profound meaning in life. You're not really going to find anything solid. And so if you want to just not think about it, that's fine. And that's why I can empathize with you if you find these videos to be super weird, or if you you know, are desperately trying to find a very simplistic answer, like for instance, I'm being held hostage and forced to do this or something. I can see why you might want to cling on to that type of reductive explanation. You know, there must be a very simply understood reason, so that I can just kind of put this out of my mind. I mean, I'm sort of imagining the thought process of the people who think that who like really insist on this conspiracy that I'm like being held hostage, despite the complete lack of any kind of evidence and the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. I mean, how many videos have I made where I'm just completely walking around with no one else around, and I go to all kinds of faraway places, you know? I've walked and talked in fucking Chile for crying out loud. Do you think my hostage keepers have like my captors like took me to Chile and let me walk and talk in a fucking anti-government protest? Jesus Christ. And you know, and we're like, you know, had the snipers on the roof the whole time. Are you fucking insane? Jesus Christ, just have... All right, I'll stop though. But you know, we didn't even give any of this any energy. It's fine. It's fine if people want to keep believing that. I don't think people really believe it. I think we're engaged in fantasy here. I'm just continuing to look at this pond in case there are any newts in there. At least one frog jumped in. But it's that time of year, and this definitely seems like a vernal pool. This is right where salamanders and newts would breed. But there's, you know, it's like, it's on the surface, it seems meaningless, right? It seems like it would require a pretty big stretch of our definitions of value and meaning to kind of make sense of these videos, right? And it does. I mean, for me too. It kind of repeatedly requires me to extend a kind of generosity and a kind of faith and a kind of good faith in committing to something that is not immediately rewarding and does not immediately provide me with the payoff of clear meaning. You know, it's not immediately meaningful, really, on the surface, you know. And henceforth, I don't mean henceforth, I mean because of that, it often requires like a certain kind of effort, or at least the experience of effort, a felt effort, for me to leave the house and kind of forget about things that seem like more practical concerns in the moment and go do something that seems on the surface pretty pointless. And we'll talk a lot more about this thing of pointlessness, because, you know, has its own kind of fraught set of implications and histories around it. So we'll talk more about that, because we can't simply rest on the idea that pointlessness is itself a virtue. We can't simply say that, like, you know, pointlessness is inherently virtuous or valuable. Like, we have to kind of look at that. And so I think we will, maybe a little bit later. But there's at least, you know, a form of consistency, if you will. Oh, there's a newt. I don't know if you can see it. It's probably small. There's a little newt swimming in there. You probably can't see it. It's maybe too small for you. But it's like I go out of the house. I mean, or in the case of the sitting and smiling videos, I stay in the house, and I do a thing that, at least from my perspective, as far as I can tell, like, kind of doesn't really fit in with any kind of popular value system, nor any kind of elite value system. At least in my present interpretation of things, this probably could be seen differently. This probably could be interpreted differently. I'm seeing how, you know, what I'm doing, what these videos are. I can also see very many interpretations that would think of them as very much aligning with popular sentiment, or a zeitgeist, or or elitist values. But I guess they don't in my interpretation of it. And so one way that I think about that is that there's almost no budget for making these videos, you know. I have a GoPro, and one time that got stolen and I had to replace it, and you know, I have a external battery pack for it and a cable, and I eventually I was using, you know, a wooden stick just to like really like maintain my anti-consumerist self-image. But then I finally did break down and buy a cheap selfie stick, you know, that extends and then can be used as a tripod, just for greater versatility and just ease of use. Eliminates some of the figuring out time, and actually does allow me to film a little bit better, but that's besides the point. Anyway, the point is that it basically doesn't cost me hardly anything, you know. There's the internet bill, so you know, I purchased some very high-speed internet, which costs more than what I might have otherwise paid for. But it's not a big deal, you know. $58 a month is what my high-speed internet costs. You know, it's not nothing. But you know, like this isn't. We have to take into account time. You know, it is a lot of time that I spend. I mean, like, actually not as much time as it might seem, though. You know, when people comment that you know, I'm spending all this time doing this and I'm, you know, wasting my time or something. I think it's actually that this is kind of like a agglomeration of time that's just highly visible in one place, that, you know, and it's over 6 years now or whatever. You know, over 6 years, if you compared the amount of time that I spend making these videos to the amount of time that a lot of people spend playing video games, it's really nothing. It's not that much. Like, it's true that I don't exactly have like a full-time other day job, and so I am afforded a pretty good amount of time that's like free to me, which I'm incredibly grateful for, and I recognize that it's it is somewhat of a rare life situation that affords me this much free time. But also, I'll acknowledge that I have put a lot of work into creating that situation for myself, and spent, you know, like, I kind of chose that path for myself, and gravitated towards this situation and worked towards it for quite a long time, you know. Just setting myself up to be not very financially beholden to a lot of things, to setting myself up, you know, more to the point, to not have my time be beholden to others, to allow me to do something like this. I still see that little newt out there. I'm sure it's too small on the screen for you to see. An eastern newt, though, if you want to Google a picture of it. And you know, that kind of involves just like foregoing a lot of the aspects of life that a lot of people might think of as important or necessary or fun or whatever, just because I don't really care that much about those aspects, you know, like more traditional notions of status and success and participation in society are things that I've to a large extent foregone, and of course, like it could be you know, very much, it could be legitimately pointed out that I probably benefit from other forms of stability that allow me to forego those forms of achievement, and I would concede to that. And yeah, it might sound like maybe I'm like defending myself a little bit or something, but not really. I mean, I'm not trying to make any point really about this being virtuous or of myself being virtuous to any extent. Quite to the contrary, I ultimately don't quite believe in anything like that. It's more the case that the forms of value and meaning and achievement that seem ubiquitous around me, that I see so many other people very invested in, just have not held water to me. They have not been compelling enough to me to work hard to get them. I just can't. They just don't hold that much meaning to me to compel me to like sacrifice my life and time and experience and freedom. I mean, like freedom, that's another whole very loaded word that we'll probably have to talk about, because there, as someone pointed out to me, like that the idea of freedom is also a term that there are a lot of toxic ideas associated with, especially at the moment. So we might have to address that in further depth a little later on. But yeah, I just like, to put it bluntly, haven't bought the hype about a lot of the things that one is supposed to care about in life. And I've found that I don't have any regret about that. And in fact, I find when I find myself making compromises and doing things in some kind of in accordance with these ubiquitous value systems that I see everywhere, that I don't fully believe in, I tend to regret that, actually. You know, if I think to myself, as I sometimes might, I've gotten a little too far out. Maybe I should make myself a little more useful to society in society's terms. Maybe I should make myself a little more legible. in these terms that I might think to myself everybody wants from me. But I find that anytime I try and do that, so much internal conflict and dissonance arises that I don't really get anywhere. I don't actually succeed in achieving the forms of significance that I think other people are looking for. That is, I don't find that I don't succeed in the traditional sense. And then also it distracts me and pulls me away from making the new kind of meaning that feels real to me. And so I feel diffused and sidelined and compromised as a person when I do that, when I compromise myself. And so you could consider this a kind of you could consider this the beginning of some kind of explanation of these videos. But it's I'll grant that it's probably still may sound a little bit abstract, as I haven't given any explanation of why specifically this format and that sort of thing. There's another newt resting on this stick here. It's too bad I didn't bring the binoculars, because maybe I could zoom in. There's a newt right there. There's another newt resting on this stick just below the surface of the water. So sometimes I may think to myself that I should make attempts to communicate with people in a more kind of socially established, socially normative manner. I should come closer to conforming to the mode of communication that is ubiquitous, whether that be in my social life, I should just be generally more amicable and sociable and engage in normal types of conversation more. Which actually I'm finding lately that's not really an issue. Which is to say, and I'll just to give you something reassuring, in case you're one of those people that is always expressing concern about me in the comments. I'll just give you some reassurance that I actually am not finding any lack of meaningful friendships. Or to say that I actually do have a lot of meaningful friendships, and they're just not represented in my videos. I hang out and have fun with people. Probably not in exactly the way that most people would consider fun, but it's a lot of fun to me. Just to allay your concerns about me, so that we can have a less fettered interaction here. And then, but further, with regards to these videos, I actually find that they provide me with a form of connection that I don't really find otherwise. Like, this actually lets me communicate in a way that feels very full and authentic. I mean, authentic is qualified with scare quotes here because, you know, I don't actually believe in authenticity, but like, this feels like a mode of communication that feels more truthful to me than what I might encounter in daily life. And, you know, this is highly qualified because, of course, this idea of truth is like highly relative and highly suspect anyways. But, you know, everybody is looking for interpretations, so here are a few. They're, of course, not the only interpretations that I'll have, and they're, of course, not the only interpretations that anyone will have. And my own interpretations will probably be changing all the time. I mean, they are. Or you could consider this as me engaging in a very conventional type of communication. I'm just being normal. Just for you. There's a frog. I was staring right at a frog. I think that's a pickerel frog is my guess. You see it? It's probably hard to see. It's brown and spotted. It's been sitting there the whole time, I think. Well, let's move forward with more interpretations of what's going on here. There could be said to be a critique of certain facets of popular culture here. Maybe there is a critique of YouTube culture here. It's not, I don't totally feel that. I don't actually feel critical of YouTube as my utmost, as my topmost reason for doing this. Like, it's like, I actually do feel earnest about making these videos, and in another sense, I also kind of love that YouTube exists. Just, you know, it's to interpret it in a negative light, we could say that there's this, like, this really toxic capitalistic contest for your attention, and the things that people do for your attention are you know, propagate all sorts of toxic ideology, you know, really unhealthy things about body image, really kind of trash values lots of, immediate stimulus without much substance. Everything kind of like predicated on what will get the most ad exposures, what will sell the most, and all of that involves so much manipulation of the viewer, and is just generally very destructive. And I think that's really true. That YouTube's algorithms of what to show you and when to show you and how to show you it are completely predicated on serving you to the advertisers. I mean, like, for some of you that I'm speaking to, this is like totally old news, and to some of you, I think maybe a lot of you, you may not have really thought much about this. It's that actually seems evident sometimes, that people aren't actually thinking about the motives behind YouTube as a corporation, the motivation behind the way the algorithms are configured, and the kind of trickle down things that motivate very many of the creators, the content producers, what they're trying to get from you. And just the whole culture that creates, and the whole system of values that pushes on you is like really unhealthy. But then at the same time, to interpret it more generously and positively, YouTube is a really, it's full of everything, Anybody can upload anything, and there's a lot of great shit on here. There's so much bizarre stuff. And we could also just think of this as being such a rich display of the human experience, and having like all facets of it. You can learn so much shit here. There's so much great, ridiculous shit. And it's free. I mean, I just hope you're using ad blocker. And then at the same, ad block plus, like I can't imagine really looking at YouTube without it. I can't imagine watching all those ads. It's horrible. And yet at the same time, sometimes I monetize some of my videos, and like, it's like, I always feel a little bit cynical, It's like kind of like facing the reality that a huge number of the viewers of my videos are maybe people just like coming off of TikTok from some very sensationalized story about it, and spending 2 seconds and not giving it any kind of credence. And so I'm like, I might as well monetize off of these views. There's just like a great many people on YouTube that whose attention spans have just been devastated by the internet and its algorithms, by platforms like TikTok and YouTube. And so they just are in a state of like needing hyper stimulus all the time and not having any attentional capacity to think about anything. And so I'm like, well, it would be practical for me to make a few bucks here and there, so like I'll maybe monetize like the particular videos that are particularly viral, like, you know, Sitting and Smiling number 5, and yet at the same time I'm making videos. I guess it's more true with the walking and talking videos that do actually require some time to be spent for them to be legible. And that I do think actually reward attention over time. That they are difficult to pay attention to, I know, because I'm not really offering anything really stimulating. I'm not offering anything very concise. I'm not offering meaning to be made in any short amount of time span. And in fact, I think that what I'm offering is probably pretty challenging a lot of the time, because when I walk and talk, I myself am often plunged into the unknowing, the meaninglessness, the void, if you will. And I think that the viewer often is as well. But then, you know, things happen through the duration. A thing happens where the meaninglessness kind of paradoxically becomes meaningful, becomes very meaningful. You know, in this video, it's like the danger here, the risk here that I feel is that it runs the risk of responding to popular questions that my videos generally trigger, that my videos generally bring up a set of questions, really, I mean, really just one question basically, which is why. And this video, I think, runs the risk of maybe only being responsive to that, and henceforth, in a way being like more myopic, because I'm just talking about my videos as a kind of abstraction. And so I am, in a sense, like talking about myself more in this video than I would otherwise, which which in a way could be thought of as more self-involved and more narcissistic than usual, more narcissistic than the type of talking in which I'm more immediately self-reflexive, where the reflexivity in speaking, like and so, you know, something happens where through this format of like extended self-representation on YouTube, the self and self-representation are revealed as to be pretty meaningless concepts, in the first place. You know, this is also, you know, pretty much everything that I'm saying is an interpretation, and all of it as such has ways in which it's also not true. And if you're familiar at all with these walking and talking videos, I think you already understand that, and so hopefully you already understand that I am in one sense compromising the truth just in order to be able to speak in a way that seems more conventionally coherent, and that's fine, because I think we've also kind of established that there is not an ultimately true way of speaking. There's not really like a more true way of speaking. It's just a matter of which facets of falsehood are we going to move through, which rabbit hole are we going to follow. That's really just the question. There's some tadpoles over here. Nope. Nope. False alarm. Those aren't tadpoles. It's not time yet. The breeding is just beginning. There's not even eggs yet, apparently. There's some newts in there.
Oh yeah?
Yep.
You see them over that way or over here too?
I saw one. Oh, there's one resting on that stick right there. It's just like his back is just above the surface.
That stick right there, that looks like a stick? That's a newt that looks like a stick?
No, it's like
I see him,
green.
his head. Oh, he's green. He matches
Yeah.
the color of the water. Thank you.
Mhm.
It looks like a turtle head, doesn't it? Look. Do you see him? Okay. Follow this big log. It's pointing right to his head. That little stick right there. See his head sticking out?
And you might see some swimming around close to the surface too.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So maybe how about some more explanations? I mean, it's pointless to explain this, but so is everything else. I mean, that's not really true. But I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll be in a state where I'm sort of looking for entertainment, but I'm looking for an entertainment that has something to chew on, you know, that has a little bit of something to chew on, you know, that's not just pure sugar. And so that, I might be in a state where I'm like looking for like a good documentary or something. Some real like hard journalism or meaty philosophical thought or something like that. And I get to the point where it doesn't exactly even matter what the subject matter is. It's like I'm to this point where it's as if all subject matter is the same to me. I mean, you might not understand that, but it's more that I'm just looking for the meaty experience of being stimulated to think in a challenging way or something like that. And I guess the way that I think is that I want things that are at least transparent about the relativity of their own truth. Things that are aware of the interpretive nature of themselves. Things that demonstrate some kind of like self-awareness, that aren't just resting on like an assumption, that are not, or at least trying not to rest on too many unexamined assumptions. So I think I make stuff like this because this would be the sort of thing that I think I would like to encounter on the internet or in life. Something really kind of difficult, something not immediately rewarding, but that also, it's like, can give me an experience of like maybe getting out of my own head. I just want to sometimes be able to listen to someone who seems relatively sane talk for a while. And that's kind of hard to find. It's kind of rare. Because the media that you encounter is always wrapped up in these insane economics that completely influence the whole value system and the whole perspective, and leads to just insanity and just like totally unexamined, unself-aware, flagrant interpretation and misinterpretation. And is always kind of like is always advertising a certain value system that, if you ask me, is unwholesome and unhealthy. Like there's always it's like everything you encounter is propaganda. Everything you encounter is, to some extent, brainwashing. It's like, and the more aesthetically appealing it is, the more effective it is. stuff is like, you know, sweet to see and hear, feels good and stimulating, and it always is carrying like an ideological payload with it that's not actually helpful to anyone other than the advertisers or for various reasons, like the egos of the people propagating. And that's in some sense, that's just kind of, you know, this is of course one critical interpretation of the media landscape that we inhabit, that I'm making. And I'm kind of making it, as you might detect, in service of bolstering my own self-image, perhaps in your mind. So it is, in a sense, self-serving for me to draw a favorable comparison of myself against other creators of media, you know, purveyors of media or information even. And so I am now, I can see, participating in a kind of like libidinal economy. I am, you know, interested in propagating the memes that seem to constitute myself now in what I'm saying, in trying to convince you of something. But also, this format of doing it, of 4 hours of uninterrupted, extemporaneous talking, does form some kind of foil against that, some kind of resistance to it, you could say. Just in the fact that it's difficult to maintain. It's difficult to maintain any version of self for that long, really. It's like the multiplicity of self at least has to usually reveals itself, I think, in these. Like, I doubt that if you watch an entire episode, I mean, let alone watch multiple episodes, I doubt that I seem like a totally consistent, totally cohesive person all the time, you know? I think, on the contrary, it's like different facets of self are emerging all the time. Eventually leading to a kind of transparency, I hope. It's like durational narcissism. It's like so much. Is this some oh no, just bug spray. I thought it was maybe some wolf piss or some buck spray. Like so much self-representation that it kind of like defeats itself over time, you know? It erodes itself through exposure. Like just saying, like, say I expose my personality to you over an extended, continual period of 4 hours, and I do that over and over again. It's like all the mechanisms have to get worn down eventually. The mechanisms of self-defense have to get eroded over time. I think, you know. I mean, I feel that happening often. So far in this video, I've retained a pretty even keel, a very even temperament, and have been able to maintain a fairly logical sounding mode of delivery. I've been able so far to present what I believe to be a fairly coherent self. But, you know, we still have a lot of time to go. Maybe that'll break down, maybe it won't. But one thing that is clear to me is that all of this is just like it's manifesting in this video, in this very interaction. That is to say, this version of self is manifesting here in this video. I would say more so than it is prefabricated, in the sense that I didn't really expect to be saying most of the things that I've said so far. And I feel it. Actually, I feel the absence that underlies everything that I'm saying, every way that I'm representing myself. I'm experiencing the emptiness. One could say. The emptiness to all my assertions. This is fairly freaky. And the you know, the ethics around me making these videos are always in question. Like the ethics of your viewership. Like, is it actually... This is freaky. Is it actually a bad thing that you're watching? Whoa. Whew. Well, that was kind of scary to get into a position like this, and it's going to be even scarier probably to leave, so I better plan on just sitting here for a while. It's not very comfortable, actually. This chair doesn't have a good backrest. I'm not sure quite how you're supposed to sit in this thing. But of course, a proposition that it's ethically bad for me to be producing you as a viewer, producing this viewership, also kind of rests on a certain paradigm of value that says something like you are being passive by watching this, that your activity of watching this is an obstacle to your further self-actualization, that you could be doing something more self-empowering with your time, that sort of thing, which definitely has merit, that idea. But it also has its converse idea that that this could equally be said to be ethically good in that same sense, because it's could be considered an intervention into an existing media landscape wherein you as a viewer would otherwise be watching something that is less transparent about its motivations, something that is more distracting and more veiled, and just more heavy in the brainwashing aspect than this is. And so, you know, this could be considered like an intervention into this this media ecosystem by presenting something that at least tries to be self-aware and transparent about the mechanisms of self-representation and the ethics behind such, and hopefully would provoke in you, dear viewer, some sort of self-reflection, some sort of, you know, higher awareness, if you will, just about the activity of viewing YouTube and related concepts. You know, to bring up the question of why you are watching this. And, you know, that in this particular ethical framework, that being a good thing for you to question that. And, you know, I guess ideally it might provoke you to question why you watch other things or why you watch YouTube at all, and could potentially point you towards, you know, maybe doing something with your time that's a little more empowering for yourself, or maybe a better experience, a more full, enriching experience, you know, maybe interacting with an actual person, or doing something that challenges yourself to learn and grow, etc., etc. And this, you know, that's legitimate, but it's also, you know, rests upon a certain ethical framework that I also don't hold as a top level of reality. You know, for one thing, it's not necessarily the case that by watching that your viewership of this is necessarily a passive activity just because you are looking and listening. You know, just because you are listening doesn't necessarily imply passivity. Like, just you know, you may be thinking a lot, and like, what's really the difference? Is there actually a substantive qualitative difference between you doing the ostensibly passive thing of listening and the ostensibly active thing of speaking, you know, being engaged? Doesn't necessarily mean you're less engaged just because you're hearing and listening, and just because it happens to be on a platform that's most commonly associated with entertainment. You know, like the idea of engagement, involvement, or whatever, participation, would sort of on the surface seem like, you know, that's better for the audience, that they get involved and engaged with something. They're more actualized, they're more actively involved participants in creating a society, you know, and not just somnambulant zombies captivated by entertainment. That's the idea, but that's not necessarily true. It's like not like, I mean, as we can see, like YouTube could be seen as the utopic alternative to television. That is, it does democratize content creation, and so in comparison to the previous paradigm of television, which has a relatively much more exclusive position of creator, of entertainment purveyor, and a much wider constituency of viewers who don't participate in creating the content. So YouTube could be seen as like the futuristic, utopic, democratic, socialist answer to that problem of everybody can produce the content. Everybody can be their own entertainer. And so here you have it, and I think it does have some aspect of that. Like I do think I'd kind of prefer having YouTube as opposed to just having TV. There's way more interesting shit to me available because of that. And then at the same time, as we see, it's not totally utopic, because everybody's involved seems to be mostly motivated by the same old drives, and you have just like loads and loads of what we would consider garbage, and super toxic shit, and people being totally horrible to each other, and unrestrained brainwashing and manipulation, and just an insane level of commodification, an insane level of self-commodification. You have these influencers, these social media stars who completely commodify every single aspect of their life and, present it on the platform. In order to get the most amount of attention, the most amount of money. And people create, ridiculous, unrealistic appearances of what their life is. It's like the creation of the simulacrum of the sensational is now just kind of like open to everybody, and so people use it and present the most idealized and untrue representation of themselves as possible, and this kind of like just snowballs with people watching. And it's like, if you want to compete for attention, it seems like you have to cave in, it seems like, to this a ridiculous kind of materialist culture, and submit yourself to outrageous body image ideals and all this sort of thing. And yet, that's not everybody on YouTube. Not everybody's doing that also. There are, you know, much more weirder and more subversive expressions out there that have been successful, and that, you know, that makes me happy. Like crime pays but botany doesn't. I love that guy. But it is kind of hard to come across, for me, like a really solid YouTube channel. Like, that's one of them. It's a little hard for me to think of other ones. I think there's GABA 13, but they're not really like producing original content. They're just like uploading a bunch of weird noise albums, but they're uploading some good shit. GABA 13. I think that's it. Like, they uploaded this weird John Deck album that's just him talking, no guitar, and I'm like, this is my shit. John Deck, Worthless Recluse is what it's called. That's my jam. I don't know, just trying to give a little shout out. And you got Delanso Media Group, although he needs. I wish he would upload more, because that's also my jam, but he hasn't been very active on the YouTube. Some good. I think he switched mainly over to Instagram, and there's some good stuff on there. But I'm not on there right now. I can't handle it. I can't handle the gram right now, or the Facebook. I can't handle it right now. But yeah, I mean, the difficulty is the algorithm, though. Like, it seems like whatever I watch on YouTube, the algorithm is still going to present to me the shit that is most like massively successful, which isn't generally the stuff that I'm very interested in. It's like the algorithm is going to keep presenting me with clickbaity bullshit no matter what I actually view on YouTube. But also, you know, this is all just pure subjective judgment that I'm spouting out here. And it's indicative of my own kind of limited ethical framework. It's indicative of a limited version of myself. Is what I've been spouting off here for a while. And I guess, this might be a concession. I might be making a concession to you to maybe kind of the lower minded end of YouTube comments and that sort of thing. I might be making a concession by manifesting my personality this way, by talking about my own preferences and stating this my moral judgments and this sort of thing. I mean, I am making concessions. And like I might be, I'm always am. You can never not be. But I might be able to try harder not to. You know what I mean? I'm sure that I could. That is, the things that I'm saying that are specific sounding, that relate to the world, feel a little bit like concessions to me. They feel a little compromised. But maybe that's okay. Maybe that is to like draw more of you in a little bit. Maybe that's good. To be speaking in a different register, a more common register. To be making a little bit easier kind of sense to a lot of people. But of course now I probably sound patronizing. Maybe I am being patronizing. Maybe I am being condescending. Not really condescending, but patronizing maybe. Making concessions for a more common form of like interpretive and specific meaning making. Offering explanations of what this all means. In accessible ethical frameworks. From my perspective, if you ask me, it's an accessible ethical framework. Even to propose good and bad at all, if you ask me, is a relatively accessible ethical framework. But I'm also saying we can do better than that. We can do better than having good and bad. We can do better than just seeming to kind of make sense. You know what I'm saying? I hope that you'll stay with me here, or at least make an attempt to stay with me. To kind of stretch out a little bit what meaning is. Stretch out a little bit what good and bad mean. Stretch out a little bit like what value is. Maybe even what entertainment is. What quality content is. And maybe even more importantly, stretch out your understanding of what a good experience versus a bad experience is. And then beyond that, what experience is at all. But maybe we're moving a little fast here. Maybe that is a little much for right now. Maybe it's time to get down off of this perch. It's kind of scary to get down off of this, to be honest. Maybe I'm just stuck up here. That wouldn't be so bad. I have an orange with me. And 1.5 bottles of water. You think I'll survive the night? It's partly scary because I'm holding the camera with one hand. This is terrifying. Despite all of my hoopla about transcending selfhood and thereby transcending death, this is kind of terrifying. But that's fine. Because beneath this specific terror of this height is, the perennial terror of no longer existing. But then beneath that, there's nothing but splendor, which in fact constitutes the terror. I'm saying that the terror of non-existence, i.e. death, i.e. this height here, is constituted of nothing but splendor. The splendor of the emptiness / full wholeness that is existence. Oh my God, this is terrifying. This thing's just held to this tree by nothing but rope. Well, how do they do this? Oh my God. Standing up. Okay, I've stood up. That's maybe the scariest part is over. And then just the stepping onto the ladder. Believe it or not, I've worked on many a roof. Doesn't mean I wasn't terrified the whole time. Yeah, I still don't know. I still have doubts. About whether something more concise would be more legible. I mean, I think it would, of course, be more legible. But then there's also a different type of legibility just to the form of this, to the repeated 4-hour form. That's a meaningful type of legibility, is repeating the time duration of an activity. And then if it gets to a whole round number, like 100 or something like that, that's another form of legibility. But then the whole length of the form is a barrier to legibility. The taxing of attention spans and of time commitment, the unfriendliness to the busyness of your schedule and your life is a barrier here to legibility. But in a sense, that's also a component of the meaning of this. There is kind of an eschewing of practicality, you could say. For me, in a way, removing myself, putting myself outside the boundaries of practicality. And this gets us back, actually, this gets us back to this issue of pointlessness. And its problematic nature, that it's not quite so simple just to propose pointlessness as an inherent virtue, you know, which I'm sure I'm maybe guilty of doing a lot in these videos, you know, of making claims towards transcending conventional value systems by the pointlessness. Of challenging conventional value systems on which the notion of pragmaticism or having a point is based. But then again, pointlessness also has an elitist connotation, in that it can be seen as an advertisement for the leisure class, or an advertisement for the social order that affords certain people the time to do pointless things. I think that's pretty legitimate, but also, I also think that pretty much everyone does and needs something pointless in life. Like, regardless of class, regardless of power and social position and all of that. Like, I don't think you have to be particularly elite in order to do pointless things on a regular basis. And I hope that the mode in which I engage in pointless activities isn't an advertisement for any kind of social order of domination or exploitation or living off the backs of others. And so that's why, I mean, I could say that that's partly why I've been drawn to making these videos that are essentially no budget in terms of money. They are pretty much unskilled, I would say. I mean, that maybe that's not true. Of course, like the type of language that I use could be interpreted as a certain kind of skill set, and you know, the ability to sit for a long time without moving could be interpreted as a skill. Sure. And all of these things, it could be interpreted as requiring a large time investment to, I don't know, sit for a long, sit for a long time and think for a long time and talk for a long time. It is kind of evidence of having a lot of time at my disposal, which, you know, could be taken as some sort of indication of a social order. You know, the fact that I don't have to like work a full-time job in order to survive. But yeah, like I said before, I have actually, like, you know, spent much of my life sort of orienting myself towards this situation like that. And it could be, it actually has taken some work to get to this situation. And I think also requires what a lot of people would consider as big sacrifices. Like things that a lot of people wouldn't be willing to sacrifice. So this kind of leads me to say that I don't, let's see, well, for certain, I have to be incredibly grateful for my freedom, so to speak, to be able to be able to spend my time in the way that I like. Like a lot of the time, at least. And yet, at the same time, I don't actually think that like my position is a necessarily enviable one. It's like there are pluses and minuses always, you know? I'm saying I'm fine. I like my life perfectly well. And there's a lot of good things about it. But then, you know, it's also difficult, just like anyone else's is. And I think if you are in a position of like either envying me or like resenting the way that I'm choosing to spend my time as being indicative of the social order, I think that you might not think that way if you fully understood me or understood my life. Like you probably wouldn't. I don't know, maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. Or another way to say it is that I think that you, in your life situation that's specific to you, has all of its own pluses and minuses, its own advantages and disadvantages, good and bad, etc. Its own like specific meaning. Like you in your specific situation have your own meaning to make out of life. But you know, that strikes me as a fairly obvious thing to say, I guess. This is a very different type of episode, I think. It's pretty different in that I'm not really making any effort to like transcend the personal. Or that's like not really happening so much. I'm continuing to kind of like speak about myself in personal terms, and you in kind of like propositionally personal terms. Whoa, slippery, slippery. Whoa, whoa. I'm on slippery ground here. This bark is slippery than I thought it was, and now I'm like, don't know whether to back up or to go forward, because it's also leaning forward, and so it's easier to go forward, but then I'm like, am I going to be able to get back up? I'm going to try to back up. Maybe I should. Am I going to be able to get back across? I'm sure I'll find a way. I think I've gone over here before. But then there's, if I start to fall, this log is kind of far. All right, I'm going forward. This is a little bit sketchy. Ooh. This is sketchy. I feel like I should just go forward fast. Whoa. This is terrifying. Again. All right, it's going all right. Ooh, red eft. Check it. Let me, that's the, that's like the adolescent, that's like the teenage form of the eastern newt that we saw earlier. Let me get out my magnifying lens. These are possibly the cutest animals on Earth. I think known to science. The cutest animals known to science. And they're very like patient. They don't run away. They're easy to spot. They don't run away from you. Look at that. Let me just put my finger next to it for size reference. And then there's those little mushrooms next to it. That's how big it is. What's up, guy? See, they're so patient. I can poke it and it won't even run away. But to be clear, it's like I'm not really confident about making these videos. I'm just kind of sticking to a commitment, I guess. Maybe I have some rough idea that I should go to a round number like 100 and then reevaluate what to do. But I do have to say that just in my purely subjective experience, it's a pretty good experience of just communicating with you for a long time like this. Like manifesting this version of whatever. It's, I think, it's a better experience, I think, than if I were just walking in these woods without communicating to you. And better than, I think, producing some much more highly produced and edited video presenting a more idealized version of myself. I mean, in some sense, this is a somewhat idealized version of myself in that, you know, I kind of remove myself from the typical stimuli of day-to-day life and am generally able to speak in some sort of collected way or something approaching that. But it's not like rabidly idealized. It could be said, it could be interpreted that I'm presenting an alternative form of self-representation that involves a healthier amount of reflexivity and self-awareness than what is more commonly offered. And perhaps that is a relevant niche to fill in today's media landscape. You could consider this episode the self-validation episode. All the answers to everything are here. Everything you wanted to know is here. I'm gonna take a pee, and while I'm doing that, you can just gaze at the skunk cabbage. This is insane. This is such an insane video. I really just, you know, it's not lost on me just how ludicrous it is. The height of self-obsession. And yet there's, I still, you know, hold on to some sliver of faith that it's not, that there's a way that it's not total like self-absorption. Or some faith that it can kind of transcend that. But it does require some faith in that. You know, to continue forth in such a sort of like echo chamber. To, like, you know, from like my subjective experience here of being just in my personal echo chamber and narrating the thought process, but yet at the same time, like this as an object, this as observed by you or whatever, doesn't necessarily have to have that connotation. Or even if it is totally self-absorbed, even if this is pure extravagant narcissism, excessive narcissism, you can it doesn't matter to you, like you can still kind of observe that. You can observe me being narcissistic or whatever, or however you want to relate to it. Like, what goes on in my subjective experience of making this video doesn't necessarily dictate how you relate to it. I think. Like, it's not of utmost importance that you see me as a good person or a virtuous person or a smart person or anything like that. Like, that's not a requirement for there to be any kind of, for there to be something worthwhile here. Like, even if in some theoretical objective criteria this is total rubbish, this is all complete bullshit, maybe it's not necessarily a bad thing for you, say, to interact with bullshit and to see it as bullshit. To experience it as rubbish. I don't know, maybe it is. I guess there is this kind of like ongoing system of meaning, like being put forth in the video. Like there's like the video kind of contains apparently its own kind of process of self-evaluation, if you will. But it's one that seems fairly open. Fairly open-ended, I think. I'm having this experience of like realizing that it all is bullshit. It all has been bullshit. Everything that I have done. You know, I'm having that very like real feeling experience of this video all having been bullshit. Like when I look back on the preceding 2 hours or so. Like it has all been bullshit. It has all been fraudulent. A fraudulent self-representation. Narcissistic. Pointless. A waste of time. Those sorts of things. It's true. I'm having, like, you know, there's truth to that. And the whole series. And like, just, you know, by extension, like my whole life or something. Like by extension, like the whole trajectory of my life. Being bullshit. Being fake. And so I mean, I am having that realization, but I'm not freaking out about it. I'm not. It's not. That's not plunging me into like a state of total despair or anything like that. It is uncomfortable and debasing, I will say now, but I suppose that I'm also just like up for that discomfort and up for being debased. Because there's also a part of me that's saying, like, you've had this experience many times before, and it actually turns out to be a meaningful experience to be debased like this, to kind of witness the like evisceration of your concept of self. Or another like negative way of interpreting that phenomena phenomenon would be that I've developed highly sophisticated defense mechanisms against humiliation, against, mortification, or not mortification exactly, but against the dissolution of my ego. That I've developed, sophisticated narratives for contextualizing moments of profound humiliation and moments of otherwise ego death, to where I'm able to narrativize these things as ego death, as a positive and meaningful experience, which, that's kind of what is happening as I speak here. That I'm actually making a somewhat coherent case for the experience of humiliation as being a positive, meaningful experience for myself, and so in some way, maybe that is a mechanism preventing it from happening fully. But not necessarily. I think it can still happen without, total emotional despair, It doesn't have to involve total terror. To feel, to kind of move into the openness. To let these constructs of selfhood dissolve a little and move into the openness. I think, it's maybe, there's always probably some discomfort involved in that. Of something falling apart. But there can also be, it can also be welcomed. And I'm feeling a sense of welcomeness. And the welcomeness isn't actually my individual self welcoming it. What is welcoming is the greater self that is not I, so to speak. Or some people will call it the capital I, the big I. The expanded self, the expanded sense of awareness beyond the individual. That is what I would say is welcoming me into its fold, and what is not welcoming my ego into it. And so what would be the discomfort, what would be the uncomfortable feeling of my ego dissolving, I'm interpreting in this moment as being, that's kind of being replaced by the welcoming of an expanded sense of self. But also, this is also a partly untrue interpretation of things. Because the greater self recognizes that it has never been absent, that that I have never been absent from it, that you have never been absent from it. It never actually disappeared. It wasn't actually clouded over by the ego. There's I mean, it's like it is and it isn't. Like, we can say that there's an experience of an egotistical self that has its another red eft, that has its self-centered drives and motivations and defense mechanisms that give it the experience of separateness, and then of the need to maintain its integrity and maintain its separateness, maintain its identity. And so there's a way in that that could be said to kind of like cloud over the more expanded sense of self, but it's not actually true that it is ever indeed separate. Look at that guy. Most potent source of cuteness on the planet known to science. True fact. And it's just been sitting there this whole time that I've been ranting. Like it's like there kind of is an illusion of the separate self, and then at the same time there kind of isn't any illusion. Like there's not really like a subordinate state of being. But then again, you can sort of say that there is, like, I don't know. I think you know the feeling, the two different sort of feelings of, we could call it contracted or expanded, of feeling a little stuck in your own self-narrative versus feeling much more like permeable and open. I think you know what I'm saying. But kind of paradoxically, it's like that guy's moving around. What's he doing? You've got find some bugs to eat. He moved his head and it was really cute. Anything these guys could do is just like overwhelmingly cute. All you have to do is sit there. All you have to do is sit there and be cute. But then if you like move, it's like even more cute. Sorry. Sorry, I just had to annoy it because they're so cute when they're mad. Yeah, paradoxically, it's like, okay, so we're talking about two opposing states, and there's a big old asterisk placed on this subject because we might have to dismantle the whole dichotomy later. Oh, the newt just moved again. And these two estates, you know, I'm calling them contracted versus expanded. And so contracted referring to when you feel like an important individual self person, versus more expanded where you feel relatively like more just like kind of connected with the world and not so self-concerned. And the contracted state is associated, I'd say, with just like he's walking. Where are you going? See, then he holds still whenever I get near. Where are you going? Yeah, it's only when I get far. Oh, there he goes. Look at him walk. Where are you going? Oh, look at that guy. Oh my God, so adorable. A contracted state being associated with you know, a lot of just self-concern and worry. Worry about the future, possibly rumination about the past, and social concerns of like, what do other people think about me? How am I gonna succeed in the world? All these sorts of things. And then versus the expanded state where you're just not worried about any of that stuff, and you're just kind of like, I mean, I think of it as just kind of like appreciating being alive and not worrying about yourself or getting anything, and generally feeling connected with the world. And either of those states, I would say, have the characteristic of like making it seem like they'll last forever, making it feel like that's gonna be what the rest of your life feels like. You know, there's always kind of that a temptation to like feel that way. So like, say you're feeling, let's say a version of the contracted state, like say you're feeling really depressed, or like hopeless, like you're just going to be screwed for the rest of your life. You won't be able to achieve anything or have anything that you want, and you know, you'll take it to extremes, like everybody's going to hate you and you'll be excluded, and whatever, you'll get sick and die lonely and miserable, etc., etc. Or that, like, or maybe the feeling that because you feel depressed, you're not going to be able to work towards any goals or anything meaningful in life, and this will perpetuate a cycle of depression for the rest of your life. And I don't know, maybe there's like some grain of potential truth there, or something, like that depression is kind of can seem to be like kind of a self-perpetuating cycle. Ooh, did you just eat something? I think I just saw him gobble something. Look, he's heading towards the skunk cabbage. This guy's making trails. Get it. But I think that's what is more true, actually, is that state doesn't last forever. It just kind of when you're in it, it just kind of feels like it will. It has that temptation. It has that temptation to think like it's going to be, if not eternal, then kind of like persistent. You know, and like gives you this very kind of like limited feeling, this like kind of like feeling of yeah, like constriction, contraction, limitation. A very like a very negative valence of reality. And then on the other side of that, the expansive feeling also has its temptation to, it's also very tempting to think that it's going to last forever, that you're having an awakening experience, and you've just realized the profound truth of the oneness of everything, and from now on you're going to be always basking in the sublime peace of this realization. And that, you know, how foolish you were to have fallen for the illusion of the separate self and all of its worldly concerns, and all the self-concerned and all the suffering that comes from that. And there might be a grain of truth to that too, that once you have that experience, then that does kind of provide a certain kind of foil against the illusion of the separate self. That it at least, that experience at least will make some imprint on your memory, and it will make it a little harder to fully believe the separate self contracted state of reality, you know? If you have that memory of the expansive state in your mind, if you subsequently in life find yourself feeling like shit and like an isolated individual, it's probably going to be a little bit harder to take that isolation as like the full truth of things. Because you'll have this memory of a different valence on reality that is a lot more peaceful. But at the same time, there still is this, that it's actually not totally true that state of expansiveness just persists forever. It's just simply not. You'll always return to the experience of individuation and having needs as an individual. And, having what you might consider to be lesser experiences of being sad or being angry or wanting things for yourself, etc., etc. Like, neither of these states are stable. But in fact, neither of these states are inherently real at all. In fact, the register of reality that I want to talk about doesn't even have states. Doesn't have any differentiation between self and non-self, between constricted versus expansive. Between individuated and interconnected. I'm saying that on an actually higher realm of truth, it's actually more true. It's like more transcendently true that none of these distinctions have any substance. That no state, no experience, no self, and no world have any substance to them. And that all that I've been talking about in the past several minutes is all a totally relative view of reality that's dependent on a lot of constructs. That aren't really real. Like the construct of time. In order for there to be a state, the states that I'm talking about, and the change between states, the difference between constricted versus expansive, the movement between expansive and constrictive, and the idea of development, the idea that one could develop into a more expansive and open individual, ultimately, none of that is true. And time is not real either. Like, because all of these depend on, all of these are constructs. All of these concepts that I'm speaking of rely on constructs of selfhood, of an individual to experience things, and they rely on states which rely on time, linear time, all of which are kind of like interrelated constructs that sure, we can talk about them in a relative sense. That when we talk about them, they seem to make sense. They make sense, right? Like you sort of know what I'm talking about. Like they do, map onto a certain model of reality that you and I share in common. But essentially, what I'm talking about is like experience, like different experience, different types of experience. But actually, there is no experience. There is no actual such thing as experience that has any substance to it. Not even this. Like, what is going on right now? Let's like look. Like, just ask yourself the question, are you having a certain, like, what, okay, first of all, maybe like just like ask yourself, like, what is this experience that you're having? How can you qualify it? I mean, we can describe it in different ways of having different emotional valences. Maybe you feel calm, maybe you feel confused, maybe you feel interested, maybe you feel bored, irritated, relaxed, whatever. But then, you look into any of those concepts, any of those descriptive words, and try to figure out what's at the basis of those? Like, what do those point to? Like, what is the hard reality that those abstract words are pointing to? And you can't really find it. Even if you take something seemingly as concrete as like feeling calm, and then, you know, look for the underlying reality of something like calmness, and we could say, you know, it's like a physiological state. It's we could say it's the absence of tension in the body. Okay, so we look at the body and its absence of tension and the relaxing feelings or whatever. But then at some point we have to grant, we have to kind of acknowledge that even the concept of our own body is a concept. It is a mental construct. And even, and so is like the idea of our own mind or our own brain even, you know? Like, you know, we might try to say like this is all happening inside my body and then like more centrally inside my brain. You know, I'm experiencing my body through my brain, and I am experiencing something called calmness that has a real basis in physiology. We might try and say that, but then it's like, okay, where then is even the basis for the solidity of your own body as opposed to the rest of the world? And you'll naturally say, look at this guy, he's making moves, covering some distance. That's kind of a long walk for a guy that size. He's hunting little bugs. Don't let his cute appearance deceive you. He is a deadly force to those bugs. I thought he was about to. Oh! He just stuck his tongue out. I think he was going for something. Like, you might say, you know, like, yeah, you might say that the body is real and substantial because I can feel it, and it you know, I can feel my hand, but I can't feel that tree or whatever. And but this is where it gets a little difficult for me to articulate. This is where it gets really tricky to articulate that then it's like, actually, what even is sensation? Like, so, you know, we have this idea of like, I can feel it. I can feel my body. I can't feel other stuff. Okay, but what actually is feeling? Like, does it actually have substance? Like, if you look, you know, look for the feeling, you know, look for your sensation, try to find it, try to nail down what the sensation is, you know, and I mean like in a substantive way, apart from your conceptual framework for it, for what it is, you can't actually find it. Like, you can't actually locate sensation apart from a mental framework of sensation. Like, it just doesn't have substantive reality. I mean, not any kind of sensation, like whether it be vision or hearing or touch. Like, it's kind of very, it's very like, it's very tempting and very compelling to say that there is actually substantive sensation, like on a level that's more fundamental than our conceptual framing of sensation, right? I mean, that seems to, that kind of like fits into the classical model that we have of our own biology, right? That like that sensation is a much more primeval biological phenomenon, which in humans then gets kind of framed and structured by conception, the neocortex and all of that jazz. But I'm saying that actually all of that is a conceptual construct, like that sensation itself does not exist apart from our conceptual construct of it. I mean, despite, you know, and I know that like it's tempting to say, but you know, that's not true. I see things before my very eyes. Okay, but can you still say that without using any ideas of your eyes or eyes at all, or the things that you see, like the tree, the leaves, etc.? Like, without all of these concepts, is it still seeing? Without all this ideation, is it still seeing? Is it still sensation at all? And I'm saying no, it isn't. So I'm not saying that they're like, I'm not singling out any of these phenomena as being false while other phenomena remain true. I'm actually saying that none of the phenomena have any inherent substance. So it's not the case that I'm saying that sensation is just an illusion, but other stuff is more real. I'm more saying that sensation is part of the whole construct of selfhood. It's that sensation is a component of the construct that creates selfhood and creates the world. And so it's like, it's not that the self doesn't exist, but the world does exist. It's that neither of them have inherent existence, and neither does sensation. Like in the model, in the story of how things are, it's like sensation is the bridge that between the self and the world that allows the self to know the world, know that the world is real. But it's actually that knowing and that sensation that create the self and the world, or create the illusion of self and world. And that create the illusion of time. And I'll have to probably explain more about time, because time is also a necessary component of this idea of the persistent self and the persistent world of anything existing. Like, there has to be time, right? There has to be time for anything to exist. But I'm saying that if you look for time, you can't find it. So I think, like, pretty obviously, we can never be in the past. We can never be in the future. Like, by definition, the past and the future aren't now. They are, you know, they're kind of by definition non-existent. You know, something that theoretically was and something that will be, but they can never be really experienced. I mean, you can say you did experience the past and you will experience the future, but like, how much substance does that have? Like, were you the same person in the past, and will you be the same person in the future? There seems to be continuity. There seems to be continuity between, say, your past self and your present self, and ostensibly your future self. But the reason there seems to be continuity is because both the past and the future and your corresponding past and future selves are projections out of the present. That in the case of memory, in the case of the past, are created by memory. Memory, what is memory other than an experience that happens in the present? Memory is a thought that happens in the present. And the future is like a prediction or proposition that is a projection out of the present. And what is that other than an imagination that happens in the present? And so the past and the future are by definition non-existent. But I'm also saying that the present is non-existent. That now doesn't exist. Like you can't find it. It's just kind of like, it's only just kind of like inferred. Like it kind of seems to exist as like, as being kind of like an amalgamation of these different like apparent sensations, you know? Like it's like somewhere in between like the thought and the web of sensations and the apparent self and the apparent world. Like there seems to be a now, but you can never hammer it down. You can never get it, you know? You can never find it. And it's just the same way with the self, and it's just the same way with the world. You can never get it. But like, weirdly enough, like all of the things that I am talking about as being illusory, in a weird sense, they're kind of like as true as anything. Like there's no like core solid objective truth like at the core of everything that I'm saying. Like there's like any would-be truth is only just like always slipping away. Like you can never get it. Like it always escapes. It always slips away. There's no fundamental like kernel or like hard truth at the center of any of this that you can like grasp. It's not graspable. But what it kind of leaves in its wake is all the things that are illusory, but in the absence of any hard truth, it's like they become as true as anything. It's like the illusion is also truth or something like that. Or like in the absence of truth, like the illusion is the realest thing. The map of reality, you know, like all the interpreting that we do, the stories that we are telling are forms of like maps of reality or inferences of reality. And yet it's as if there isn't actually a territory to correspond with a map. There's only a map. There's only a map. There is no territory. Which is why it's like okay. And it's okay and it's inevitable for the maps to exist. Or to at least seem to exist. And it's in fact miraculous. It's and ordinary. I know I think I've been saying things along these lines a lot the past few videos, but it keeps striking me as both totally miraculous and just unbelievable. And simultaneously totally ordinary. Simply that there seems to be anything at all. And it's like that there is anything, you know, like. But what I mean here when I say that there is anything, it can't actually be expressed by words. Because actually it's already always expressed in everything. even if I'm saying that nothing has any substance and it's all appearance, even if I'm saying that this here now is not even an experience, doesn't even have anything as substantial as experience. Even if I'm saying that there's nothing even as substantial as an appearance, that there's not even appearance. I also have to say, paradoxically, that it is just, it's just like completely, unutterably incredible and amazing that there seems to be anything, that there even seems to be like a ghost of something. And it's like, in one sense, like you also have to paradoxically say that that nothing is nothing, that nothing does not exist, that there's something, that what seems, what appears, is. Is just amazing. And just totally ordinary. Just totally normal. Completely. It's like that there is anything at all is impossible, and it's totally expected. It's impossible and it's inevitable. Completely profound and completely mundane. And the tone of voice that I'm speaking about things with right now is like one of awe and one of profundity. And yet it's pretty much, this is pretty much like fungible with like a totally mundane experience, like total like everyday normal experience of being the self existing in time, having practical shit to do. It's all on the total same level as that. There's no higher or lower, really. Like there's no, like this isn't like a greater truth, I don't think, than anything. Like the truth of like me getting hungry and like wanting to go eat something. Like is just this. That's just like the same. That's not like a different level of reality. That's just like the same. 'Cause I haven't eaten anything today, and it's like, I think it's almost 6 o'clock or something. 6:22 p.m. I've not eaten anything. I'm not trying to brag or anything. I had a stomach ache earlier and I just couldn't. So now it actually feels good because I'm starting to feel. I wasn't actually hungry earlier. I wonder if that, sometimes I suspect that like my physiological state of emptiness and my like metaphysical proclivities have some correspondence to each other. And so like this is where actually, like, just to kind of like relate back to earlier in this video, and lend a little bit of a thread of coherence to like this overall video. It's like now I could say is like the part of the video where like a different form of meaning comes about, becomes revealed, that would not be able to be, that wouldn't come about in the same way if it weren't for the kind of like impractically long character, the impractically long duration, and the like apparently pointless nature of it, It's like apparently pointless, like from a certain perspective, from like the more exterior perspective. But then like once you really get inside of that, it's like a different type of meaning like does come about, and like calling it totally pointless isn't really true, isn't totally true. I mean, like yeah, on a certain level, like it is pointless on the same level that everything is pointless, that there isn't any point to anything because there isn't even anything at all. Like on that level, yeah, it's pointless, but it's actually like has as much point as anything else does, I think. But I should probably get across this creek and start heading back to my bicycle, because it is getting chillier and I'm getting hungrier, and I have a jacket at my bicycle. I love the structure of these rocks, like the linear structure of these rocks, you know. It's always, there's like always these lines going in one direction, and I believe this is what they call the Wissahickon schist. And sometimes in this schist occurs a type of crystal called kyanite. And kind of funny story, one time after a sojourn on the west coast of the United States, my first long music tour on the west coast, my friend had taken me to some rock shops, and I just generally became like really obsessed with the geology, because as they say, the geology on the west coast, that's where it all hangs out. It's all just very visible, because you just see all these rock faces and amazing formations. I think a bit more than you see on the East Coast. So I just returned on this trip and was like super obsessed with rocks, and was biking around with a fanny pack full of a small collection of rocks and crystals and petrified wood and stuff that I'd found. And I went dumpster diving, and in the daytime, and as I was getting food out, this other guy rides up on a bike, and he jumps in the dumpster and starts pulling out lemons and stuff. And just totally out of nowhere, he says, you know, I wish I could be pulling crystals out of the earth, but since I can't really do that so much around here, this will serve as a substitute, like pulling the lemons out of the dumpster. So, you know, like finding valuable stuff. It's not a gem, but it's a lemon, you know? It's a thing that has meaning and use to a human being. And you know, this of course like just kind of struck me as like being somewhat serendipitous to just like run into another dumpster diver who just offhandedly remarks about his interest in rock hunting. And so, you know, I'm like, oh yeah, well, I just happen to have a fanny pack full of crystals right here. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm not one of these people that believes that they have any kind of magic powers. They don't have any, I don't think they have any healing properties. I just don't buy any of that bullshit. I'm just fascinated by them. They just have an incredible aesthetic fascination that is deepened by the knowledge of the inorganic processes that lead to their existence, and the amazing geological timescales that are required for their existence. Just puts you in a whole different frame of mind. A whole, you know, it just kind of puts you in like a post-human or pre-human, post-biological or pre-biological way of thinking about the world that to me is very expansive. So anyway, we get to talking about crystals and rocks, and he tells me that there's this creek down south of Philly where you can find these kyanite crystals. And so like we exchanged numbers and stuff, and I think a couple weeks later or something, we just take a long ass bike ride down there. It's like pretty far, and just dig through a creek that's looks pretty similar to this one, and it's like made, the bed of the creek is like actually pretty similar to this. And we did find some kyanite crystals, but I have to say it's a little underwhelming. It's like because they look kind of just like a neater form of the schist. They're just like a tighter, more compact, like kind of shinier, like more structurally articulated form of the schist. And because they occur in the schist, and it's like my interpretation is like they're just kind of like a more like a further articulation of the mineral structure of the schist than you have kyanite. And so it's like a little bit, it's like more of a concise expression of that mineral structure that you can see in a little chunk of it, which is pretty cool, you know. I guess that's like a way of thinking of crystals, actually. Like why does a crystal have the the sort of like discrete aesthetic resonance that it does, you know? Like you see a crystal and you see order, right? You see an order that you wouldn't see in a pile of sand. And so I don't believe it to be the case that a crystal is like inherently more ordered than a pile of sand. But in fact, our perception of order in a crystal as opposed to a sand is more evidence of the human, the nature of human perception and the nature of the order of the human mind. Like the fact that a crystal seems to actually express something of the order of nature in like a more concise way than it's like the big chunk of schist, I think actually is saying something about the structure of like the human mind and the human experience. Like these are actually mirrors of each other. The order perceived in say a crystal is a reflection of the way that our minds are ordered. Is something that is what I'm saying here. Anyhow, it's like really tempting to just like, you know, dig around here. In search for like the ordered piece, in search for the gems, in search for like the things that like pop out to you as like making more sense, you know, as exhibiting like more order. But then at the same time, like in actuality, the perception of order, the appearance of order, is actually also created by the appearance of disorder and everything else that is, you know, in apparent opposition to it. That in actuality, like, this distinction between order and disorder is also like like that distinction is an artifact of human perception and human comprehension, human conception. And that's just kind of cool, I think. And that simultaneously, like, it can also just be said from the other way round, that the human experience is an artifact of the order of reality. And that, yeah, that both of those things that I just stated are both just kind of like interpretations, but are pretty cool anyways, I think. Oh yeah, and the other thing that occurs in the Wissahickon schist is garnets. I don't know. I don't see any in this one, but I think I did pass over some today in the course of this video, they're just like little, very hard gems, like little tiny, roughly round gems that are so hard that they use them to make sandpaper and other abrasives. Lots of cool quartzite pieces, though. Yeah, there's all kinds of quartzite. Man, I feel like so placid, kind of. I'm very glad that I decided to make this video and didn't, rather than what's the word? Rather than just stew in my own juices. Rather than just sit around in a pissy mood. I felt like it was sub-ideal conditions. What do they got going down there? Because it was like later in the day than I usually start, and I hadn't eaten and had a stomach ache earlier and was feeling pissy and all of that sort of thing. But now I'm just like so glad that I made this video. It's like I'm actually glad for this to exist. But of course I am. It really does like dwarf these like self-concerns that I have so much of the time. These like worries about like who I am and what am I making of my life, and then it just disappears. Like, and those things, like not only do those like questions kind of like lose their relevance, but also the answer like shows up. The answer shows up in the doing of this, and then I usually feel pretty good. But then again, it's like it's not even about feeling good either. But at least in this instance, and in most instances, it leaves me feeling a kind of good that I don't get from that from a whole, I don't know. Yeah, no, that's not true. Yeah, there's no need to like there's no need to like rank experiences, you know. It's like work, you know. It's like work that feels good to me. Like this is. I think that this like this kind of could be said to like occupy the category of experience called meaningful work. But also we don't need to categorize it like that. It's probably best if we don't. But I'm just like kind of like giving you some of these things just because like I know a lot of people kind of struggle with these videos. I mean, maybe they're not struggling enough. I just know that I guess I'm just trying something a little different in this video, which is like maybe leaving more things to grab onto, more like markers of conventional sense, more like markers of conventional logic, for people to grab onto, or like not necessarily grab onto, hopefully not necessarily grab onto, but as entry points. I'm trying to leave more accessible entry points in this video, I guess. You know, a more conventional register of thought that hopefully like kind of gives way to something that's more on the horizon of understanding. And like and at the same time, like it's kind of nice that we can or at least that I can like feel pretty good throughout a lot of the process, or at least towards the end, you know. It's good, right? We can say something's good. Or at least I mean I can say I feel good right now. And, you know, ultimately, what else do we have to evaluate things by, ultimately? And we got to see several cute amphibians. That's always a bonus. You know? That's the sort of thing. That's like, damn, like you can actually say that like life is good. Or that at least can be, you know? Little things like that, like seeing an adorable fucking red eft in the wild walking around. You know, I can't really philosophize that away. I mean, I could try, but we can just say that, you know, it's pretty fucking cool that we can have that experience. Or other things like it. It's pretty fucking cool that we can exist as perceiving individuals and perceive other beings and an other world that and like perceive beauty and stuff like that. That just that potential even exists. right? Right? I don't know. It seems like this might be all bullshit, but it kind of seems to me like a lot of the sort of like aggravating shit about life is maybe just kind of like a kind of like abstracted or like twisted around, like seeking for like shit, like little shit like this. I mean, I guess this is just me, but like experiences like this kind of like evince the inherent goodness of being. And I don't mean like goodness in the good, bad, you know, human moral paradigm. I mean like the just inherent fundamental like goodness, that anything exists, that there is anything, like being like a fundamental good. And, you know, like maybe my use of the word good is too fraught because it implies the dichotomy, but like whatever the version of good is that doesn't imply the dichotomy, it's that. And that the things that we spend a lot of time worrying about and like striving to get are kind of like twisted around, like distorted, like simulacrums of shit like this, if you ask me. And that we get kind of caught in this world of like seeking towards shit like this that's all like presented to us like super mediated through other people and like systems of commerce and whatnot, and like systems of like various forms of capital, whether they be like material capital, like, you know, like monetary or like social capital, and all that kind of shit being held out in front of us like it's imperative to obtain. And yet like the essence of all of that is like still just, you know, you can just find it. Like anywhere really, if you look. I think I see a fox. I totally see a fox. I don't think you're going to be able to see it because it'll be too small on the screen. I don't see it now. It like went under a log or something. But it's like, it was like way over there on that other side of the creek. Yeah, it's like red and had the bushy tail. That's like, I don't know, man. Like seeing a fox. That's just kind of like the to me, that's just like the cream of the crop, the quintessence of like there being like a beautiful mystery in the world. Like I see a fox and they always kind of like seem so mysterious and beautiful to me. Like because you hardly ever see them, And when you do see them, it's always like just for a brief instant. And then the way that they walk or run is just like so incredibly graceful. It's like they're just gliding. It's like they're just gliding in the air, kind of. Yeah, it's just like I always get this feeling of like awe, and that there's like so much wonder to be discovered in the world. And so yeah, like just the fact that I just saw one right now, like kind of towards the end of this video, is just crazy. I just feel like there's just this overwhelming feeling of beauty, and I know it won't last, and then I know that probably in not too long I'll just be like, you know, concerned with eating some food, and I'll be, you know, like having the typical concerns of like worrying what people think about me and all that sort of shit. But anyhow, like, yeah, this is just like a little moment of affirmation for anyone who might need it and who doesn't at times, you know? I think everybody needs it sometimes. And it also, I think it's always available, like when you need it the most. If you are willing to just like be open to it, I think. I don't know, maybe this is all bullshit, but I think like I'm looked at the time, and if my timing is correct, I think there's like 6 more minutes left, and like I'm like so tempted to just like end it right now, because it's like, you know, seems like a beautiful moment and everything like that. But I'm gonna continue like my hard-nosed commitment to the durational framework here, and make sure that I go the full 4 hours, which also is a reflection, I think, of, to me, this kind of represents a commitment to like the acceptance of the different facets of experience as all being different facets of the fundamental good that I was talking about just a little bit ago. The mundane, the distracted, the whatever. The hungry. But yeah, please don't like mistake me. Please don't mistake me for being on some Leibniz shit. I'm not on no best of all possible worlds tip. I'm just saying that there is, in fact, a lot of shit worth living for, and there's a lot of meaning to be had and to be made in the most uncompromising ways. Be uncompromising. Commit to striving for what's real to you. Even if it's like next to impossible to find, I'm promising you, you won't regret it. Or like, you know, maybe at times definitely at times you'll have lots of doubts. And you'll experience a lot of difficulty. But also you'll know. There he is. There's the fox. It's probably too small for you to see. It just ran across. There it is. I'm trying to roughly put it in the center of the screen, but I don't know if it's going to be too small for you to see, I imagine. I promise it's there, though. He's running around. That's so cute. See, it keeps paying off, you know. I stick to my commitment to do the full 4 hours, and then the fox shows up again. I wouldn't even have seen it if I hadn't. Damn. I better start walking back. Well, I have to say, I'm like incredibly grateful for you having given as much, however much attention that you have given. I'm grateful for you spending however much time you have spent with me. And yeah, I just hope that, I mean, yeah, I'm saying, like, in one sense, I'm like hoping that something resonated with you here. I hope that you might have felt something of what I've felt or experienced, but then at the same time, like, I don't hope that, because also I'm saying that whatever your experience is also perfectly belongs and is like just as much a profound expression of what is as anything else, and completely normal and completely ordinary. And so in that sense, like, I'm saying it doesn't matter really that for me to desire for you any one experience over another. But I mean, if you've watched some of this video, I think you know what I'm saying. I think you know what I'm saying. We're just kind of like jumping around between different registers of describing reality, which is pretty fun, as it turns out. At least at the moment. At least at this moment. I think it's that time, and it seems like an appropriately non-dramatic time to say bye.